But okay, good. All right. Well, welcome again to the webinar tonight, and thank you for joining us. We shall be getting into it right away. It is the opinion of those who best understand the physical system, and I believe our presenter is one of those, that if the physical laws were strictly obeyed or observed from generation to generation, there would be an end to the frightful diseases that cut life short and of the long list of maladies that make life a torment or a trial. And that this wonderful machine, the body, this goodly temple, would gradually decay and man would at last die as if gently falling asleep. By Mrs. Shedrick. Wise words. And with that, I'm going to introduce our presenter tonight. His name is Roger Drummer, and that's his website. He has two websites, actually, AskRogerDrummer.com and TryTianQi.now.com, and he's going to be talking about what Tianqi actually means. But Roger Drummer is a formulator, a U.S. patent holder, and NCCAOM diplomates. I guess he's going to tell us what that means. Of Chinese herbology, who travels extensively throughout North America, lecturing on the benefits of Chinese tonic herbalism and nutrition. Roger's 29 years of experience ranges from formulating personalized tonic herbs and nutritional supplement programs for tens of thousands of clients, including many notable celebrities. He has created nutritional supplement product lines, consults, and teaches courses to the public on health and nutrition, and he trains apprentices in the art of herbalism. In addition, Roger is the spokesperson for Functional Fungi, a grower and distributor of medicinal mushrooms for whom he lectures on the immune properties of mushrooms. He holds a U.S. patent for growing biologically active anthocyanin-rich medicinal mushrooms. I hope he's going to talk about that as well. He has given hundreds of lectures in the past 10 years on a variety of health-related issues, including Chinese herbology, and he has studied a variety of healing modalities, including a couple of things right here which I can't pronounce. Roger is a published writer, certified herbologist, certified nutritionist, public speaker, educator, a former triathlete, a runner, and a cycling enthusiast. He is a husband and a father of 3 kids. With that, I just want to say again, it's a great honor to have Roger do this presentation for us. Roger, are you there?
I'm here.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you for joining us, and I know this is you're just going to dance on the floor. We're just going to hand it over to you, and pretty much you just tell us how you want us to do this. I know you've done this 1,000 times. So I guess we'll just hand it over to you then.
All right. Well, thanks, David. I'm just going to have a general talk. Every time I give a lecture, it doesn't matter if it's in person or on the phone, what I really want to do is just raise your awareness about health, because that is what it's all about. The more information you have, and not only information, but different ways of looking at what we call disease, helps anyone who's either experiencing it or knows someone that's experiencing it. It gives them a way of looking at it maybe slightly different and understanding it a little bit better. When you understand it a little bit better, you can make conscious decisions about what you want to do. And you know, the beauty of what I'm going to talk about tonight, which is the wisdom of the body and homeostasis, is that it gives you an insight into a lot of different areas of health that we all consider diseases, and you get more of the picture of the fact that most of them are just symptoms. And what are they a symptom of? They're a symptom of the body being in balance for a long period of time and struggling with itself for a long period of time to maintain a certain range of health, and finally the struggle gets too big and it starts to fail. I want you tonight to think about the idea that maybe what you think about as disease is not only just a symptom, but just the fact that your body's own innate healing ability finally lost the struggle after many, many years of keeping you in balance when it was not getting its needs met. It's not much different than any other relationship you have in life. If someone's needs aren't being met, the relationship falls apart. It usually takes a period of time because you always have faith that something will change or something will happen that you'll become closer but in that relationship. But in the human body, it's the same exact way. It just keeps struggling and struggling along with what it has, hoping that it will finally be able to come into balance fully when you correct things that you put into it. Because homeostasis is really just how your body maintains a certain level of health, but it's all dependent on what you're actually giving it. There's nothing that goes on in your system that's not related to just cellular health. But what is your cells, how do your cells react to anything that goes on? It's all about the environment they're in. Just like everything that happens to you is about the environment you're in, your cells are in an environment that's created by nutrition. It's created by energy in the form of thoughts and feelings, and also energy from outside the body, electromagnetic energy. All these things affect the environment of the cell, and it responds to it. Homeostasis is just your body's own innate healing energy that takes all this into consideration, is constantly moving toward a state of what it feels is radiant health. And it will move there if you give it the right tools. The problem is that so often in life we don't give it the right tools. It spends most of its energy with things that throw it off instead of promoting or moving more toward a state of health. So when you can learn the basics about what throws it off and put more things in it that bring it into a state of health, then your whole system begins to change. Even your thought process changes because you now see that you've done something on your own that has an immediate effect. But even beyond that, when certain energy systems in your body are corrected or in a more vibrant state, it influences the way your brain actually functions. And what types of thoughts you actually have in certain situations are related to the health of your glands, your internal organs, and different energy systems that are related to it. And so we're going to go over a lot of that tonight. And I want to start off by saying that, you know, I'm typical of people that get involved in the health field. Either you have someone who just happens to be interested in chemistry and all these different things, and they kind of get into nutrition because they find it fascinating. Or you have people like me that almost died because they were so worn out or so stressed out and ended up with chronic fatigue. That was what I did. And so you're forced into it, and when you kind of fall into it, you find out that it's just so fascinating, you just end up doing it for the rest of your life. And so that's what happened to me. I wandered into a Chinese herb shop when I had chronic fatigue, which I had been building up for many, many years. You know, I was so stressed out. I was always stressed about how I viewed myself in the world in general, how people viewed me on a daily basis. Completely created the lifestyle I had. So I was a triathlete. I used to do half Ironman triathlons. It wasn't uncommon for me to run a good 50 miles a week or bicycle 400 miles a week along with that, and at certain times add in another 10 miles of swimming. I did that, and I did enjoy it to a certain point, but a lot of it was done because people looked up to me because I was someone who did triathlons and exercised a lot. And I was moving into this state of being really fatigued because I pushed myself so hard, and then I had a traumatic auto accident which really pushed me into the fatigue part. I had gotten hit by a truck when I was on my bicycle, ended up in the hospital for 8 days. The stress of that and the stress of the fact that I had just lost my identity, which was as a triathlete and someone who ran all the time and was physically fit, was completely taken away from me. And then I had to examine my life and what was basically left of it. And really there wasn't much there. So I ended up with chronic fatigue, and luckily for me I wandered into a Chinese herb shop just out of the fact that someone had sent me there to pick up some herbs, and it was associated with another school I was going to. And I found out the guy took apprentices, and I became an apprentice and started learning about the original school or the original thought system of Chinese medicine, which was called the Three Treasures. And he took me on as an apprentice, and I started working there, which was great because I was on disability and I couldn't do anything anyway. And so I had these amazing experiences taking some herbs, which really gave me an insight into why I had chronic fatigue, that I had caused it myself. It was due to stress, and a lot of the stress was due to my own thought system. And so this amazing system that I learned, the Three Treasures, was the basis of all Chinese medicine, and it's about 5,000 years old. But what was fascinating about it is that it was all about balance. It wasn't what we often think of Chinese medicine being, which is, medicines for acute conditions and things like that. It had more to do with regulating the body's energy and looking at how the body stores energy, your original energy, and how that's involved in healing, looking at how you make energy every day and how that affects your outlook on life and what they refer to as Shen, or spirit, this inner radiance that you're born with, and how it manifests out in your life and how you create a life around that. That's what the Three Treasures was about. And it wasn't even until 15 years after I was learning that system that I realized, looking back at my previous training in nutrition before I became an herbalist, that they had taught nutrition mostly from a standpoint of medicine. If you look at all the nutrition out in the health food stores, and this was something I didn't realize until I've been an herbalist a long period of time, that they talk about nutrients as medicine. One single thing for all these different things. One single thing for this, one single thing for that. And the reality is it's not how it actually works. They're tools that assist the body in its own regulation of energy, and it's used by your system to maintain homeostasis. So instead of taking a nutrient as a medicine, you look at the fact that it's essential to certain functionings of your body, and if you don't have it, then things are thrown off and you have to compensate. So it wasn't until I've been an herbalist for a long period of time that I realized nutrition had to do with homeostasis also. And homeostasis, and what we know it as in medicine and in nutrition, was the same thing they're actually talking about in Chinese medicine. Everything, it doesn't matter if it's herbs, if it's your food you eat, the nutritional supplements you take, or even if it's modern medicine, if you need to use that, all is helping the body in some way maintain homeostasis, or allowing it to get to a point where homeostasis can regroup and come back in, which is often the case with modern medicine. One of the things I want to state before I go much farther tonight is that I'm not one of these herbalists that are passionately against medicine. I'm really not. I think it's great if you can heal yourself, whether you're taking a drug or an herb or a nutrient or through your diet. The main thing is that you want to heal yourself. You want to give the body what it needs to actually come to a state of health. And I think the worst thing about drugs, and there are a lot of bad things about them, but the worst thing is that we've been programmed in this country to feel like once we get a drug from a doctor, especially for a chronic illness like high blood pressure or heart disease or diabetes or all these things, is that's our personal drug. That's our thing that we take for the rest of our life. And that's the main problem with it, is that we've developed that mentality. What I call pharmaceutical nation, basically. We've all got that kind of training. And when in reality we should look at it as, wow, I have the opportunity to take this thing that might save my life at this moment, but it's really just a sign that my body's completely out of balance. So I'm going to change my diet and bring it back to a more of a state of balance so I don't need that thing a month or two down the road. And that's the way you should have a relationship with that type of therapy. So the fascinating thing about Three Treasures and even Ayurvedic medicine, to somewhat, any natural state of medicine or natural development of medicine around the world had to do with bringing you into a state of balance. The system that I learned, Three Treasures, just looks at the fact that you have a certain amount of life force you get from your parents. And that's a regulating energy that's stored in your glandular system, but particularly your reproductive system. It's responsible for the strength of your skeletal system, the brightness of your mind, all all these different things are, your reproductive energy, all these things are tied into what they call Jing or vitality. And it's like an energy source, or almost like the battery pack for your body for the rest of your life. So the whole idea behind Chinese theory on health is that you realize you have a certain amount of life force, this regulating energy, and that you should protect it and not use it up unwisely throughout your life. Because that's the amount of energy that determines how your body heals from something, and also it determines the length and quality of your life. Now, you've all heard of the second one, which is called Qi. Qi is simply how much energy, physical energy, you make on a daily basis out of the food you eat and the air that you breathe. So it's really important that you exercise and you do some sort of meditation, which is a slow, regulated breathing, and that you eat nutrient-dense food. And this is the important thing about eating really good food every day, is that your body makes this Qi on a daily basis. And when you make Qi on a daily basis, the physical energy required every single day to do all your physical functions, then you don't tap into what the Jing, or your adrenals in this case, and use them as an energy source, which is what almost everybody does by using faulty diets, drinking too many stimulants, skipping meals and running on coffee instead of food. That all just turns your adrenals on and adds to the stress that you already have in your life, and then that burns up your Jing or life force. And then the third treasure, which is Shen, which relates to roughly spirit. It's an inner light that you're born with that's stored in your heart. And the whole idea behind the healing system of China was that you protect your life force, you build good energy every day, and then you cultivate your lifestyle, so you have an opportunity every day to tap into that Shen and have it manifest out in your life. And the other great thing about it is that Shen is what determines how stressed out you get every single day. Because Shen has to do with consciousness, it has to do with your higher mind and your spirit. And if you have a really clear picture of what life is really about, you don't get as stressed out. And when you're not as stressed out, then you don't turn your adrenals on so often, and you don't stimulate excessive stress hormone. And so all these things come into a state of balance, of balancing out these three treasures. And that was the system I learned as an apprentice and went on to become a diplomat of Chinese herbology, which simply is the term that the regulating agency of Chinese medicine in the United States gives to someone who is licensed to practice Chinese medicine or Chinese herbology without doing acupuncture. There was a need in this country for people to practice herbology without having to do needling, because so many people went through school and loved Chinese medicine, but they never got really comfortable with sticking needles in people. And so all those people now have an opportunity to go out and practice medicine without having to get an acupuncture license. And so that's what it's about, and what a diplomat of Chinese herbology about. But it doesn't matter if you're looking at Chinese medicine or any other natural state of medicine, or looking at nutrition. It's all about homeostasis. How do you regulate the body and deal with the issue you have going on so it becomes back into a better state of balance so that the body can actually heal itself? In Chinese medicine, they focus on organ systems, regulating your liver, because that has to do with your nervous system and stress response, or building up your adrenals, because if that's weak, then it's like a loss of energy every single day. And they do it through regulating organ systems. Well, whereas with nutrition, it looks at how you lose homeostasis in a different way, as what nutrients are you missing that's causing the body to work overtime. And the reality is your body's working overtime all the time with most people, and that's how you lose touch with your natural state of balance or homeostasis. And we refer to it as wisdom of the body, because your body knows what to do in almost every situation if you actually feed it right and give it the proper material to deal with what's actually going on. And tonight I'm going to deal with two of the main ways that your system is thrown off of homeostasis. One of them is stress. We all know that. Stress is the main, what I call the big gorilla in the room, because it's the main thing that throws off homeostasis and causes you to lose so much of your energy. and that, especially that regulation of energy. And once that happens, it plays a role in 90% of all disease. So, you know, if you can get a handle on stress, then you're going to be able to get a handle on almost every single chronic ailment that's out there that people are experiencing. And I'm going to give you some clues as to how that works with different things. But the other thing that people don't realize is that one of the biggest stressors in your entire life is just sugar. It causes your body to have stress response, and it locks it in stress response all day long. And in and of itself, it makes the stress that you're having every single day 10 times worse. And so you're just locked into this stress response and this sugar response all day long. And so the best way to get a grip on your stress is actually getting a grip on your diet and on your sugar, and how that plays a role in throwing everything off in your entire system. I often give a great little analysis of how your body simply gets thrown out of balance when you look at osteoporosis. You know, everybody in this country looks at osteoporosis as, I didn't absorb enough, I don't have enough calcium in my diet. And they always relate everything back to calcium. And one of the reasons that happens is that modern science has this reductionist theory where they like to reduce every single thing down to one simple answer, or one simple, in this case, one simple nutrient, one simple chemical. All these things are easily understood to them, broken down to one simple thing. Well, in osteoporosis, they look at calcium because calcium makes up most of your bone. And so if you have osteoporosis, which is a weakening of the bone, then obvious to them it's got to be calcium. Well, there's other ways of looking at that. And you know, when you look at the statistics on the fact that we consume more dairy products and calcium in this country than almost anywhere else in the world. In fact, every country that has the highest consumption of dairy products, which we're told have the most calcium, also have the highest levels of osteoporosis. So it's got to be related to something else. And I like to use this simple story of just thinking about soda pop, which is a sugary food which produces a lot of acid. And as we all know, calcium buffers acid. And so when you look at the fact, and you think about homeostasis in this way, you pour a soda pop into your stomach, and it's just a bunch of phosphorus, you know, phosphoric acid and different sugars and chemicals, and I won't even get into the artificial chemicals they put in it, artificial sweeteners, but just think about the high sugar one. When you pour that into your stomach, it's about an acid level of a 2. You know, we all know that alkaline is around 7.2 in that little space there. So when you pour something that acidic into your stomach, it has to be buffered by your own body when it goes into your intestines, or it's actually going to kill you. And so your body knows this. It goes into the regulatory mode. Your system secretes all this bicarbonate soda, which is actually what it produces out of minerals in your system, that buffers acids when it goes into your intestines. So it does that, and in that process, you just feel a little rush from the sugar, and you have this sugary sweet thing that kind of picks your brain up and stimulates it a little bit, and you have all this sugary rush going through your system, but you don't realize that you were just saved from all that acid by your natural body's ability to regulate its own pH using this bicarbonate soda. To look at it a little differently, every time that happens, your body has to take calcium out of your bones to actually make more of that, to buffer that soda that goes in your system. Now, you might not be a soda drinker, but the average guy that drinks soda pop drinks about 50,000 cans of that by the time they reach the age of 50. So you can imagine how much of that mineral is being pulled out of their skeletal system every single day to make that mix to buffer that much acid every single day. And when you think about it in that terms, that same person, if they're drinking that much soda pop, also has a very, very acidic diet, because along with that goes a lot of junk food that is very acid producing and is probably the lowest diet on nutrients needed to make that buffering mix and to put minerals back in your skeletal system. And then when you throw stress into the equation, your body in most instances has about 6 or 7 times more need for certain things when it's under stress. Okay, so now you put it under nutritional stress, meaning your diet doesn't have enough nutrition in it. and it's pulling these things from resources all the time. So your diet's not matching your needs for your skeletal system and all the minerals that are being pulled out. And so over a long period of time now, and even as you age, the older you get, the more the balance of calcium going in to calcium going out starts to become, lose its proportion. So you're automatically pulling more things out of your skeletal system as you get older anyway. So just by drinking this soda pop every single day, you're pulling all of this stuff out of your bones. But you have to look at the fact, because of homeostasis and because it's only interested in keeping you alive at this moment, it's not thinking, well, I'll take a little bit out and buffer it a little bit so that he feels better 20 years from now. No, it's dealing with what's going on at this moment to bring you to the highest state of health at this moment, and it pulls all of this stuff out. And so the reality is, when you realize that and how your body is working with all this acid you're putting in it and this poor diet and everything, when you end up with osteoporosis 20 years later, you should actually be thinking, wow, my body works so well that it took me 20 years to get osteoporosis, or it took me 30 years to get this disease instead of dying 20 years ago. It's actually just a sign that your body was working so well with the food or fuel that you actually put into it. And so instead of looking at it as what was going on, was I calcium deficient, because that makes up one little thing that goes in your bones, you have to look at how the body reacts to every single thing you put in it and where you went wrong with the level of nutrition you put in it and how it was reacting to the bad things that you put in your diet. And your body reacts that well every single time you eat anything. There's tests now. One of the great things about the nutritional world is that there's now have the ability to test so many things that we never did 40 years ago. And they now know your body moves totally toward a state of disease within minutes of eating something that's not good for it. It shows up in your bloodstream. It shows up all over your body within an hour after eating something. All these things can be measured of moving toward a state of ill health. And the same thing can be said about eating a really good meal that has high in nutrients. It can show that the whole body's moving toward a better state of health within an hour or so of digesting that meal. So all these things are happening on a daily basis. And generally, chronic illness is just looking at how your body has been fighting what you put in it for so long, or trying to maintain this balance, that it's losing the fight, and you end up with a chronic illness. Let's say you ended up with heart disease, or you ended up with diabetes, or you ended up with high blood pressure, and you think, wow, my body's just, I have to go get this drug. And the reality is you ended up there, but you were moving toward it for 25 years sometimes. And it's just that your body was working so well that you didn't end up with it immediately 20 years ago. One other great example of that is of how we look at heart disease and how the body's trying to actually fix itself. And then we think that we've developed this problem, yet the body is actually reacting the exact way it's supposed to be reacting, given what it's been put into it to kind of heal itself. And one of those things is cholesterol and high cholesterol. Cholesterol has been tagged back in the 70s or so as the main culprit in heart disease. It's always been blamed for everything that goes on with heart disease, and we've developed all these drugs that have nothing to do with but cut down on the amount of cholesterol you have in your body. And nobody really looks at what cholesterol is really about and why you have extra cholesterol in your system. And I often call high cholesterol or cholesterol and heart disease the racial profiling of heart disease, because cholesterol is in the area, so they blame it for whatever goes on in that part of the body. And in this case, it's heart disease and plugging of your arteries and all these things that are going on. But the reality is that why do you have cholesterol in the first place? Why does your body produce 80% of the cholesterol that you have in it? What is the point of producing something that is so bad for you? Well, the reality is that cholesterol is needed to repair cellular membranes. You cannot have any cellular damage go on in your body or even make a new cell without having proper levels of cholesterol. So you need it. You can't make testosterone. You can't make any hormones in your body without having adequate levels of cholesterol. And so why is it ending up in your arteries and becoming a problem then? How can this beneficial substance be something that causes a problem? Well, when you look at the fact that cholesterol is related to heart disease and it collects in your arteries, right? So why is it collecting in your arteries? Why do you produce more than you actually need? Well, if you have high cholesterol, it's a sign that you have inflammation and cellular damage somewhere in your body. And when your body does not have the nutrients present, this is a part of homeostasis again and regulation. When your body recognizes that it doesn't have the nutrients to repair cellular damage in your arteries, then it produces cholesterol and a certain type of lipoprotein along with it to take care of that actual damage. It's a secondary measure, in this case, to repair something that should have been repaired by vitamin C and prevented by vitamin C and vitamin E. It's just a natural function of those nutrients in your body to actually fix something and keep it in a state of repair. And then when you don't have it, it has a secondary function. Your body goes, well, I don't have this actual substance here at this moment. I'm going to produce some more cholesterol, take it out to that place, and repair that instead. And the problem with that, though, is things start to stick to it now as it goes by. So we're blaming cholesterol in this case instead of looking at why did I have a heightened need for that in the first place, and why did I have to use it to plug that actual hole. And so we start blaming things like cholesterol and that it just goes bad and it's evil. In fact, we've now created bad cholesterol and good cholesterol, and there's really actually no such thing. Cholesterol is just cholesterol. It's called LDL when it goes out from your liver out into the body to do its repairs. It's called bad because it often goes rancid. Just like any oil sitting on your kitchen shelf, it'll actually go rancid. And so how do you keep it from going rancid? By eating a really good diet that contains vitamin E or supplementing with vitamin E. Because vitamin E is what's used even in oils you buy from the store to keep them from going rancid. When your body has vitamin E, LDL cholesterol doesn't go rancid. It doesn't then become foamy and start to cause more inflammation in your arteries. And HDL is the same way. HDL is called good only because it transports cholesterol back to your liver. Well, that's great, and it is a normal function, but most people don't have very much HDL. Why? Because the body it's dependent on certain nutrients and certain types of antioxidants that occur in plants to actually produce the enzymes to produce HDL cholesterol. So all of these things, when they're missing, start to cause a problem, yet we just call cholesterol a problem, and we take a drug that interferes with the production of it, and then it starts to cause its own health problems, and we further deteriorate our body's own innate healing ability by now putting a foreign chemical in the system that may be beneficial at first, but still accelerates the actual problem. We've never fixed why we have inflammation in the first place, and that inflammation just gets worse, but we have less cholesterol. And that's one of the reasons why with heart disease, we actually have around 50% of all the people that die of heart attacks or have heart attacks actually have low cholesterol, what they consider to be cholesterol almost in the perfect range, because we're not dealing with the actual cause of what's going on. We're pinpointing one chemical and then lowering that, and it really doesn't have much effect on anything that has to do with heart disease, because the body will regulate all of these things. You can start to put nutrients back into your system, and it'll completely heal itself from having plaque in the arteries, having really high cholesterol. I had this great experience when I was a beginning herbalist, which started to formulate my ideas on Chinese herbology and to move away from so much fixing things as to looking at how I can get involved with regulating this own healing energy in the body. And that was the fact that I had a person get a hold of me at my herb store that was due to have open heart surgery. And that person wanted something that would help her recover from that traumatic surgery that she was going to have. So in my little herbal world, I knew that the body makes qi and blood, and when you have an adequate amount of energy, you tend to heal much quicker. So I told her I was going to send her this formula that was based on adaptogenic herbs, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. And that formula would help her build energy in blood, and when she came out of surgery, she should wait 2 or 3 weeks and start taking more of it, and then she'll get her energy back and she'll feel fine, right? I told her to take it for the 4 weeks leading up to her surgery, and then to quit 3 or 4 days before, just like you do with most herb programs. And so I let it go at that, and I sent her the herbs. I got a call from her 4 weeks later, and she just said to me, Roger, what the heck was in that herb formula, right? And I automatically thought something went wrong. And so she started to explain to me that she didn't need open heart surgery because she went in and had her little scan done the day before, and they said you don't have any blockages of her heart. And she had a 90% blockage of one of the arteries in her heart. And it really started me to think about, one, how in the heck did that actually happen? And why don't we know more about how that actual mechanism happened? It wasn't until many years later when I had other similar responses doing a whole host of different things that I realized that Chinese herbs traditionally are thought about as adaptogens, or they're thought about building qi or building jing or these different things, but we never looked at the fact that they're all plants. And plant foods have something called flavonoids, and there's many, many different types of them. You hear about antioxidants out on the market all the time, but these flavonoids have this amazing ability to heal inflammation in the arteries. And when the body gets what it needs to heal the inflammation, it has a secondary function of being able to know how to take all that stuff out of your arteries and put it somewhere else. Generally, even now, I did it with Chinese herbs. I've had clients who use pomegranate and different levels of antioxidants and vitamin K. All these things have this natural ability. Your body needs those nutrients to raise HDL, which will go to an area of plaque and actually take that calcium out of it and deposit it in your bones, take that cholesterol off your artery walls and take it back to your liver and have it processed again. All these things are natural things. They're not miracles. It's just the innate healing energy of your body. It's your own regulating energy, knows what to do when you actually give it the ingredients needed to actually do that. That same herbal formula, this all formed the basis of what I do today. And, David mentioned earlier that I have a website called Try Tianqi Now. Tianqi is the name of an energy stress drink that I make in a powdered little pouch that you take once a day with a glass of water. And it's based on all these things I'm telling you about now, the fact that herbs regulate stress, especially adaptogens, and they have this high level of antioxidant activity to them that have a very healing effect on your entire system. And so that story with the lady who had healed her heart really got me to thinking, and it was a formula that I used a lot in the store because it was made for the general public to just be a stress tonic, to build energy, to do all these different things. I ended up giving it to someone who was a diabetic, mainly just because he wanted some extra energy. He was in a wheelchair. And so I gave him this general tonic mainly because I knew it was very good at protecting your kidneys. And instead of just looking at diabetes as something of regulating sugar, I realized that the main thing that happens to everybody with diabetes is that their kidneys fail because your sugar is too high and it causes all this oxidative stress to your kidneys. So I gave it to him as just a general overall tonic. And what happened with him was after about a month or so of being on that, he went into his back for his every 3 days dialysis that he was on. And the doctor told him that he was doing so well he could just start coming in every 3 weeks. And wow, he was just like amazed at that. He had been going there every 3 days for years. And so, it wasn't a cure of anything. It was never given to him for that particular illness. But the reality is when the body got something that it needed to actually bring about a healing response, his kidneys and his entire system was able to withstand what he had going on, his chronic illness, because it was stronger. It had this strength in his kidneys and in his adrenals, and his body had this regulating, healing energy that was able to better withstand his life crisis that he was experiencing at the moment. And that's the beauty of Chinese herbs. What I really love about them is that they have this ability to strengthen the glandular system, which is most often related to your stress response, and also this what they call life force in Chinese medicine, or Jing, and strengthen the entire overall body response. And so that started to push me into really looking at what are these magical things that I've been giving out without knowing exactly how they function in the body, other than the standard qi they always tell you about in Jing. And it really turned out to be about regulating energy and adaptogenic herbs. And so I started to focus on that more closely, and started to work a lot with just this very small class of herbs called adaptogens. And it's one of the best terms in all of herbology, really. An adaptogen is something that helps your body adapt. How does your body adapt? It adapts through its own regulatory response, or your own glandular system. So anytime you hear the word adaptogen, it has to do with an herb that strengthens a particular gland that's involved in stress response. And this is why it's so important with homeostasis, because, again, what throws homeostasis off the most? It's stress. Stress is basically a symptom of, or a stimulation of, fight or flight. And once you lock into fight or flight, this is the problem with most people, especially in America. Once you get locked into fight or flight, you're in it almost all day long, every single day. What starts out to be a natural response to a stressor, and then where you go into the natural response and then you come back out, well, you never really come back out anymore. Because instead of being what it was when it was developed millions of years ago, where you were reacting to something that was going to kill you, and then when the danger was over, you survived and relaxed, now we're reacting to burning the toast, the alarm clock, getting stuck in traffic, having somebody at work look at us in a way we didn't like. All these different things evoke a smaller stress response, but it's always coming before the last one is over. So the body never actually recovers. And then when you add the diet into that, that stress just continues on 24 hours a day. So when you have a stress response, it's really a symptom of fight or flight, which basically means your hypothalamus pituitary sent a signal down to your adrenals that just release stress hormone and adrenaline, and your body gets primed for fight or flight. You have this surge of sugar coming out of stored, the stored sugar, that glycogen that you have in your liver and your muscles, and all this floods your bloodstream, and you're ready to just go. Your mind is really clear, and your muscles are ready to burn up all that energy, and you're just primed for flight. But the problem is you're either sitting behind the wheel of your car, or you're sitting in front of the TV watching the news, or some type of movie that's, where they're blowing up and killing things, and or you're sitting in front of your computer, and your body doesn't have the ability to actually burn up any of that energy or sugar. So you're not only having the response, the body response, but now you have all that sugar, which causes inflammation, and you have no way of clearing it out. You secrete all this excess insulin out into your system, and that in and of itself causes inflammation. And you're locked into it all the time, because high levels of sugar cause you to go into sympathetic stress response. So it just is kind of this constant, everything just keeps adding on to everything else, and then all of a sudden you can't get the blood sugar out of your system anymore, because it's there at such a heightened level that now you're moving toward diabetes. You're still having stress response to that all day long because of having too much insulin, too much blood sugar. All these things are going on, and yet we just look at it in a simple way of taking another drug, when we should look at what can we do to actually stop that response? What can we do? What is our body required at this moment to be able to regulate itself? And the thing that I found, and what I love working with, are adaptogenic herbs. You have something like ashwagandha, which is the main herb that's actually been proven in medical laboratories to reduce stress response or excessive stress hormone by 30% in about between 30 to 60 days. It's been proven, and you can actually make claims for that in the health industry, at least one form of it, the form I use in my drink. You can actually make claims for that, because it's been shown in a medical setting to do that, to reduce stress response. And so you take that herb in your system, and it immediately affects your pituitary and your adrenals and goes into reestablishing the feedback loop. Is what most people lose over a period of time, is that feedback of saying the stress is over, go back into recovery. That's what you lose in chronic stress that goes on for more than 30 days. And so once you take that type of an herb, it assists your body into reestablishing that feedback so that you can have proper response. And, you know, there's other herbs like rhodiola. I love rhodiola. I use it for the same thing. It regulates hypothalamus pituitary response. It immediately, when you take an herb like ashwagandha or rhodiola or one of the other adaptogens like reishi mushroom and eleuthero, all those things, when they go in your body, have an immediate effect on your pituitary, and the first thing that happens is you calm nervous tension in your system. And then what happens then is you get a signal that your adrenals are allowed to relax and start to soak up energy. And that's the recovery mode of having a stress response, of going into that phase where the adrenals are now signaled that they no longer have to be pumping this out. They can go into recovery mode. And that's what adaptogens do. In my particular formula, Tianqi, I actually combine that with herbs that are considered in Chinese medicine to be for your adrenals. Because if you don't have food there for your adrenals to soak up, if your diet's not actually adequately there with the nutrition needed, they won't have enough energy to reestablish themselves. And almost everybody has a weak point in their energy system or in their glandular system, and almost everybody at that one point is their adrenals because it's turned on too often for too long, and the body is having this stress response continuously. And so in my drink, I looked at what is actually going on in stress response and what herbs can I actually give people to regulate it, yet stress is not just about regulating that response. What else is going on in the body that's detrimental to health? And when you look at how stress, because I don't want to be just like someone who created a drug for cholesterol or something else and I just deal with one chemical. I want to see how the whole body is actually responding and how you bring it back into a state of balance. Well, when you do it that way, you realize that by dealing with the stress response, I'm now lowering stress hormones, which is great. I have herbs in it that reestablish kidney function, so the body will better be able to withstand stress, but also the stress of having too much sugar in the system, which is another layer of what goes on with stress response. But then I looked at what is the other major thing going on in this country that has to deal with aging, and it has to do with stress and suffering from lack of nutrition. And I realized it was brain function. You know, how can you have an impact? You can't really work on stress, let's say, without doing something to improve brain function. Because when you look deeper at stress response and you look at what's going on disease-wise in this country, and you realize that, you know, we have this big thing with cancer everybody knows about, but one of the main things that scares people even more than that is loss of memory, dementia, Alzheimer's, all these different things. And how does stress play a role in that? And how does nutrition play a role in that? And when you start to look at all these things, you realize that when you eat a poor diet that doesn't supply your body with nutrients, then your brain is actually suffering. Your brain is suffering from a lack of nutrition, and what I say, it's actually starving to death. Most people with memory issues have actually been starving their brain, you know, without realizing it for probably 20 to 30 years, meaning that their diet or some other program they're on along with their diet never had any nutrients specifically to feed their brain. And then maybe they fell into this pattern of taking a particular drug for some other health issue that interfered with their brain function and they didn't know it, and combined with the food that they quit eating because they were told to, because it was related to some other disease that was needed to feed their brain. When you look at that whole thing, I realized that with loss of memory, that you had to do something besides reduce stress hormone. You had to feed the brain. And you had to put somebody in a position of having good brain energy, or they're not going to be able to function and have the energy to deal with stress in the first place. And one of the things I realized over a long period of time was that when I started really looking into memory loss and dementia and all these things and how it relates to nutrition, is I realized that the number one food that people in this country have access to on a daily basis that feeds their brain is the same food that they were told not to eat for the last 40 years because they were having problems with their cholesterol. So we're kind of moving back to our cholesterol. And that food, as you probably know, you've all eaten them, is called eggs. And I was like kind of stunned to realize this, is that people are put on a drug to lower their cholesterol, which interferes with the production of cholesterol, and which is also essential to the communication of the neurons in your brain. And then you're told not to eat the number one food that supplies you with the one nutrient that's missing that works on the one neurotransmitter that's deficient when you have dementia and Alzheimer's, which is acetylcholine. So you see how the body, there's this interrelationship to every single thing you do, and when they force the body not to have one particular thing, it can actually damage itself, again, because it doesn't have the nutrients needed to regulate anything. So when you look at cholesterol and you look at eggs and you look at choline, your brain needs choline to actually make acetylcholine, which is the nutrient needed to, or the neurotransmitter that's responsible for access to memory. It's also responsible for the speed by which your brain actually works. So when you don't eat something like an egg that supplies you with that nutrient, your brain is actually starving a little bit. And then you're taking a drug that interferes with the communication from the neurons anyway, and now you have this extra interference in your brain. And then when you look at stress response, and everybody's locked into stress, and the excess stress hormone, you look at the fact that excessive stress hormone damages or makes the hippocampus area of your brain, which is the center of your memory in your brain, and is also responsible for generating new neuron activity in the brain. It makes it like a sponge for toxins from the environment. So all these things are going on in this whole pattern, which is now putting you in a right position to have a loss of memory over a long period of time. So I looked at that and I realized if you're going to deal with stress, you have to tell people about putting nutrients in their body that boost brain function. There's an amazing thing out on the market, which I use in my drink. It's called acetylcholine, which is 98% pure choline that's rapidly absorbed into your brain, so it has the food needed to actually peak that neurotransmitter. And so when you combine that and other nutrients that are good for brain function with something for stress, now you reduce stress hormone, which allows the body to regulate its glandular function and go back into a state of not so much nervous tension, and then you have nutrients in it which automatically peak brain activity, so you're able to pay attention better and to focus. And when you can pay attention and focus better, you're better able to handle stress, so you don't stimulate so much stress hormone, and you've kind of allowed the body to start to regulate itself and to feel better on a daily basis and move more toward a state of health. And so all these things, you know, and I tell this story mainly because it shows you how every single thing is interrelated and how every single thing, you can't correct one little chemical from something without having a major effect on something else. And when you look at, you know, the fact that heart disease is such a big thing in this country, and again, we're still focused on cholesterol, but what happens with stress response in heart disease? Every single time you have excessive stress hormone, it actually causes your heart to beat harder. And so if you're not dealing with that, then every single time your heart beats, it beats more forcefully. That pushes more blood at a higher rate through every single artery and vein and capillary in your entire system. And when that happens, your whole body responds to that. Your body responds by tensing up, tightening up around those channels by which the blood is moving through your entire vascular system. It tightens up to withstand that extra little bit of force, and then when at the end of that process, to send it back, because it's more tight, it sends it back more forcefully, and that hits your heart a little harder, and your heart reacts to that. And so your heart then gets that reaction to where, and then it sends it back more harder throughout the system. That force by which it goes through your body at every single juncture causes stress. That stress causes inflammation. Then if your body doesn't have the nutrients to deal with the inflammation, it causes damage. And so everything is kind of related to how this stress response goes on. And then I mentioned earlier how you're dealing with excessive stress hormone, you're dealing with excessive stress response all day, and then we have the other gorilla in the room, which is called sugar, which causes another stress response in your system. And when you add that into your stress response and the response your body's having every single time you're stressed, you're adding an inflammatory chemical back in your system that causes amazing amounts of nutritional deficiencies, and then your body is having an even harder time regulating everything that goes on. And you look at how now your heart's beating harder, and it's causing all this inflammation in your arteries, which is pushing you toward high blood pressure. And then the first thing you do when you want to sit down and eat and you're stressed out is you actually reach for something sweet. Why is that? Because sugar gives you an opportunity to change the way you feel quicker than anything you can put in your body besides alcohol and drugs. And that's why, and since I mentioned it, the first 4 things or so that we all gravitate toward when we're really stressed and not really conscious about our health is sugar, alcohol, drugs, and tobacco. And why is that? Because all 4 of those things change the way you feel almost instantly. And everybody is craving the idea or the ability to change the way they feel almost all the time because they don't pay attention to the way they feel in the first place. And by paying attention to the way you feel and doing something about your stress, realizing that the main first way to deal with your stress is by eating better, because putting sugar in a stressed out body just causes more stress response, causes more inflammation, and depletes more nutrients, which causes you to have all these other diseases along the way with stress response. And so by being conscious, and I know if you're on this line tonight listening to this lecture or tuning into David's programs, that you're actually conscious about your health. So you realize that you have to eat better when you're under stress. You have to be aware that you're under stress, and you're going to put a high level of nutrients in your system because your body has a heightened requirements for nutrients when you're under stress. I often tell people that a stress response or a stress every single day is like getting under the hood of your car and taking the idling device and turning it up to 60 miles an hour. So your car is no longer idling at a stop sign at 2 miles an hour where it conserves fuel and it runs really slowly and it runs at this great speed which doesn't cause any stress to the engine. No, your engine is turned up to 60, so when you're at a stop sign, you got to have the brakes on like crazy to keep it from going out into traffic. When you're stuck in traffic, the thing's still running 60 miles an hour, and that's kind of how your body is under stress. In your car, you're using up an inappropriate amount of fuel going nowhere. And it's the same way with stress response in your body. Your body's running so fast inside with all these mechanisms trying to repair itself and using up an inappropriate amount of nutrients, and you're not actually doing anything because you're locked into stress response. And this is how your body then wears out over a long period of time, and you start to manifest a chronic illness. And in the case of stress and sugar and diabetes and high blood pressure, why you always see these things listed as being part of metabolic syndrome is because they all just lead into one another because they're all related to the same type of responses you're having in your system. And they can all be dealt with just by looking at stress response and looking at what you feed your body every single day. It doesn't even matter if it's, we look at high blood pressure, which I mentioned a little earlier with the heart beating too forcefully and causing stress throughout your system. Well, you combine that with sugar, and what happens? You have an inflammatory condition because you have too much stress hormone. Your arteries are reacting to it by getting stressed and getting more inflamed. You sit down and eat some sugar, which causes sugar to go way up in your system, which is inflammatory, which causes you to pump out a lot of insulin, and over a period of time you become insulin resistant, meaning your cells can no longer listen to it, so you just have high levels of sugar and insulin in your system all the time now. And so what happens to your high blood pressure? Why does that come on down the road? Because the body's trying at all these times to regulate everything that's going on, and it can no longer do it because it's too high of sugar, too much insulin. To make insulin, the body has to use magnesium. Magnesium, very few people take adequate supplies of it in their system, so you're using a lot of your magnesium to actually just make insulin. And so it's not used as the anti-inflammatory in your vascular system that it's supposed to be used for. Magnesium is what relaxes your blood vessels. So you're magnesium deficient combined with the extra stress response, which is causing spasming in your arteries, and then it just goes overboard and you start to get these responses of having too many spasms and your blood pressure starts to go up. You have a problem with water because excessive insulin causes too much sodium in your bloodstream, and now they put you on a diuretic. All these things are a snowballing effect of the body not being able to regulate itself again in the presence of excessive stress hormone and excessive sugar in your body. So anybody out there who's listening to this can actually deal with almost any chronic illness they have. It doesn't matter what it is or what you think that you've been to a whole bunch of people and they can't figure out what it is. It doesn't matter what it is. If you sit down and simply start to eat a better diet and use a few herbs and nutrients to enhance that diet, you can make inroads to anything you have going on. You'll be surprised if you just sit down and eat a low glycemic diet, find out some adaptogenic herbs or even TNG, anything that you want to incorporate with your health practitioner into your system, and start to deal with stress response, you can make inroads into almost any chronic illness. And I'm not saying you can cure anything, because I don't even believe in the word cure. I think that this whole idea of people thinking that there will always somewhere out in the universe there's this state of perfect health, I don't think it actually exists. I think we're always in transition of getting healthier or moving back away from a state of health. And there's levels of health that we probably don't even understand, because it has to do with levels of consciousness and levels of having an open heart and all these different things. So there's always another level that you can actually go to. But anybody can move from the point that they're on just by dealing with stress and dealing with the sugar in their diet. You've heard of the Mediterranean diet, and people are, it's being touted as this, cure-all for everything. Why does it actually work? Well, because it's low glycemic. It's based on mostly plant foods. Any carbohydrate that's in it has fiber in it, so it's good for you. Carbohydrates that don't have fiber you should never put in your body, because they're just like eating liquid sugar. They turn into sugar immediately, which causes another stress response and causes inflammation all over your body. So the Mediterranean diet is just a natural way of putting foods in your system that are based on plants, that have a high level of flavonoids, that have beneficial fats that you actually burn for energy, and causes your body to trigger the burning of your own fat cells for energy. And so all these things happen just by changing your diet. I remember reading, this is one of my favorite stories. I was reading a lecture by Dr. Russell Blaylock, who mentioned that he had been to a lecture on high blood pressure given by one of the great experts, considered one of the leading physicians on high blood pressure in America. And the guy said, I've had high blood pressure myself. I cured it with the Mediterranean diet. It took me 6 weeks. But I wouldn't recommend you tell anybody that, because they won't follow the diet. And then his whole seminar was about 6 different drugs that you could take. And so the reality is wow, he cured himself of high blood pressure by changing the food that he actually ate. The food did not cause the stress response. And so his body was able to regulate itself and move into a different state of health based on this ability of just having in it what it actually needs to function. And so often in this country, we all make the mistake. I made it when I had chronic fatigue. of thinking there was one single thing out there, you know, that heroic model of medicine. There was one single thing out there that I needed to find to kill off something that invaded my body and deal with my chronic fatigue. And then I realized by having this amazing experience drinking some Chinese herbs that I caused my own chronic fatigue from stress. My body couldn't heal itself if I just dealt with my stress. And in that moment, within a few minutes, I actually doubled my energy, and I felt completely different. It took me longer to heal from that, but just the realization that I was the cause of it and that I could change it by changing a few simple things caused me to go on the path of healing. It's all about regulation and how the body actually regulates itself, and by giving it a chance, by not putting things into it that throw it out of a state of balance. I want to tell a little story about my daughter before I kind of start to wrap this up. I could go on for a long period of time. There's a lot of things to talk about. But I had this amazing experience, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone, but it was an amazing experience.
Hey, Roger. Roger?
Yes.
Roger, you there?
I'm here.
Okay. Before you get into your story, I just wanted to re-emphasize that you do not have to feel rushed. If you feel there's more information you want to give, please go ahead, okay? There's really no time limit.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Go ahead.
All right. Well, I had this amazing experience that I wouldn't wish on anyone. If you all remember, about 4 years ago, we had this spinach E. coli crisis in America. And that spinach E. coli crisis was where they had the E. coli was actually incorporated into the spinach. So if you didn't cook it at a high temperature, you could get sick from eating it. It wasn't something you could wash off or anything like that. Well, my family, I'm a vegetarian. I have three daughters. My whole family got hit with the E. coli. We were eating organic spinach that we had gotten from a local store here, and within a few days, our whole family started to get sick. It wasn't anything we thought was serious at all. We didn't know there was something going on around the country with E. coli. My one daughter, who was, I think she was 9 at the time, she got kind of a stomach ache. I gave her some anti-inflammatory herbs. She felt better right away. It went on for a day or two, no big deal. And then my little one, who was 18 months old at the time, started to get sick and have this strange diarrhea, so we took her to the doctor. He thought it was some sort of retrovirus, didn't think anything of it, told us that to either take her to the hospital for an IV or have a 7-Up. And I looked at him and I thought, if you can have the option of having a 7-Up or going for an IV, it must not be too serious. I took her home. I thought she would just get over it. Well, she didn't. She got really sick. We ended up taking her to the hospital 3 days later, which is now 5 days after she started to be affected by E. coli, which is a very important time limit there I'll tell you about in a few minutes. But we got her to the hospital. The doctor still didn't know what it was about. It took him 3.5 hours to get an IV into the girl. She was really in a lot of pain. She was moaning. We put her in the hospital. The doctor said she's just dehydrated. She'll be fine in the morning. She'll be running around. So we spent the night in the hospital room, sleeping in her room. The next day, the doctor came in, and he just looked at us and said, this is his exact words, you got to get the hell out of here. There's nothing we can do for you. I've called an ambulance. I'm sending you to a children's hospital specialist up the road, 30 miles up the road. So we really knew it was serious then, and we went up to the hospital, and the first thing, we got on the intensive care unit floor. First thing the doctor said to us was that your daughter has, we're pretty sure she has E. coli, and that she has less than a 50% chance of going home alive. And we were just shocked and stunned. I still at this point didn't know there was anything going on with spinach. I then, after, he started to interview us, and so he said right away, look, we're going to put a stunt in her stomach. She might need a kidney transplant. She might have to go on dialysis. She has, we're going to measure her fluids. She can't eat or drink anything without measuring it. She might need blood transfusions, all these things. He's just hitting us with all this information. And then he sat down. He said, I want to ask you about what you eat and what you do for a living. And I was pretty kind of stunned by that. And so he sat there and wanted to know what I did for a living. I told him I was an herbalist. Our whole family was vegetarian, that my daughter was breastfed for 13 months. She ate all organic food. I was the main cook. I prepared everything that she ate. My wife was a yoga teacher. She was, we ate really well. We were in the health community. And so we are aware of what goes into her body. She's not someone that eats junk food or sugary things or anything like that. And the amazing thing happened at that moment. The doctor decided not to put her on dialysis immediately. He thought, because of our lifestyle, that the baby would be able to withstand the HUS, which is hemolytic uremic syndrome, and which basically means your kidneys are fighting the E. coli continuously, and in that killing off of the E. coli, they consume your red blood cells. And if your red blood cells hit a certain point, then your kidneys and your internal organs turn into liquid and you die. And so he thought that she would be able to withstand it because of her lifestyle, because of what we actually fed that child and how we took care of her and how we took care of ourselves. And I look back at that and I realized he was making a decision based on life force. How much life force was in this baby compared to other ones that he gets into the hospital for the same thing. And so, and I've had conversations with him about this a year later when we're all home, and have moved on in life. And so the reality is that decision he made on the amount of life force we had in our baby will affect her for the rest of her life, because every single day he would come in and say, I just think it's going to move. I don't want to put her on dialysis. I just think she's going to make it. And we spent 9 days in the hospital not knowing if she was going to live another minute or another hour or anything, until finally the evening of the 9th day, a marker on her kidney moved, and it showed that her kidney was actually improving on its own. The doctor was ecstatic. I mean, you can imagine what we felt like. We've been sleeping on the floor and in chairs in the room for 9 days at that point. But it moved, and she started to improve, and she was able to go home after 12 days, 11 of it spent in intensive care. And so, but the main thing the reason I want to tell you this is that he made that decision based on what he thought from our lifestyle and diet, how much life force she had to withstand a disease that she was, or a crisis that she was going through. And that determined, because now a year later I found out that anybody that gets put on dialysis at that age has a 50% greater chance of having a kidney transplant, high blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes, every major chronic illness. It just puts them up in this huge category. In fact, the article I read was a research article in the Washington Post that said the government's dirty little secret is that everybody that has dialysis at that age has a huge history of chronic diseases by the time they're in their 20s. And so she's now in a category of a very small chance of having a kidney transplant or anything else happen to her if she watches her diet. Which surprisingly is the same diet she was on before she went in, is the best one for her, because of the way we eat. But the reason I want to make this point clear is that every single person in life will have some crisis, whether it's from an auto accident or it's from some chronic disease or something as you age. Almost everybody goes through a crisis in life with their health. The determining factor is not always the hospital you go to, which can play a major role, or the doctor that you have, or how quick the care is that you receive. A lot of it is based on how much life force you have in your body at the time of that crisis. One of the things I learned in Chinese medicine is that most people move through life, and this is substantiated in any medicine. You can, Western medicine, you can look at it. People have, because of stress and poor eating habits, have very low functioning livers, very low functioning kidneys, all these things, and they don't even know it because they're just moving slowly through life, eating really poorly and not taking care of themselves. And when a crisis comes up, those are the people that always invariably just fail. And why? It's not because the illness was so bad. Sometimes it's just a flu you catch. Sometimes it's some other little thing, and they just pass away in their 60s or in their late 50s or something like that. It's based on the fact that they never paid attention to their nutrition, and they never paid attention to their stress and how to actually do natural things to keep them in a state of health. And so their body did not have enough of this regulating energy and life force to deal with the crisis when it came up, and the whole system failed. And so I've seen that happen so many times in the 29 years I've been in the health field, and people don't realize it, and they don't usually pay attention to their health until they have a crisis, and then they try to move towards something natural. The fact of the matter is that we have access now today, more information than has ever been available, and an amazing cutting-edge information on herbs and nutrients and all these different things that people can do to offset their stress and to help their body regulate itself and to heal itself. And the sad part about it is that most people don't have access to that, and they don't really realize that there's other answers out there to what they have going on. And even in that situation, there's nothing better that you can ever do for yourself than to look at how is my stress ruining my health and dealing with it, and how is my diet playing into my stress response. That's one of the reasons why I made my Drink Tianqi, because people have to, I made it in a way that people can take it and actually have a response of feeling a little happier and feeling a little better almost immediately. And why did I build that into it? Because most people, if they don't have some sort of response to a health product, within 2 or 3 weeks, they'll just say, well, it's not doing anything for me. You know, and that same person usually isn't sensitive enough when they take a product to know if it's beneficial for you or not anyway. Has anybody ever felt vitamin C? Vitamin C is one of the best things you can ever take, yet hardly anybody ever feels it. You know, and so it's one of those things I just build in, because if you can have a positive feeling and handle stress better, even one single day, you get a message to your subconscious that goes, I can actually have a life where I can handle it better. I don't have to have a life of just reaction to everything. I can have a life where I establish what I want to do and how I'm going to react to all these situations, and I can enjoy life instead of having it happen to me. And that's the biggest thing, the biggest step that you can make in stress is realizing that you can determine not only how you react to stress by how much energy you have or how much energy you present yourself to a stressful situation. So your state of health every single day determines how you're going to react to stress, how much energy you're going to lose to that stress, and how your body's going to either be locked into stress or actually go into recovery afterward. And it's all based, again, on what type of supplements you take, what type of lifestyle you have, what type of food you actually put in your body. Everything is determined, and everything plays a role, and it also interacts with every other single thing in your diet and everything that goes on. There's nothing that happens by itself in your body at any time at all. Everything is related to another substance or something else, all in this play of homeostasis, or how your body actually regulates itself. David, I'm going to open it up for questions, if we're going to do that. Are you there?
Sure, absolutely. Yes, I am here. Wow, this has been fantastic. Fantastic. You make this theme so simple and straightforward. Thank you very much. Okay, folks, you have been treated to health wisdom in its finest, or at its finest. Oh, this is great. Please type into the chat box in the top right of your screen, for if you have any questions, and I will be sure to read them out. Okay, I will just give you a few seconds while you're doing that. I just want to make a quick announcement that these webinars are being recorded, obviously, and that's why we ask our speakers to take as much time as they want to really treat the topic to their satisfaction. We do archive them, and obviously we have a membership thing that allows people to access those archives. We have close to about 150 presentations, all high quality webinars. Some have pictures, others do not, and you can access them at any time. In fact, what we're doing, I'm letting you in on a secret now. What we're going to do in the next couple of week or so, actually it should be ready by next week, is that we're going to give everybody access to these webinars. You can watch all of them, anyone you choose, since we started 2.5 years ago. You can watch them online and have access to whatever it is. And it will be a great learning tool, because you can take things like what Roger has spoken about as the basis. These are the fundamentals. Then you can study cardiovascular disease, or you can study about what your body needs to be healthy heart-wise, or your brain, you need brain health. You can just just spend as much time as you want just studying these different aspects. It'll be a great resource. And the information is on our website. Okay, the question here, and I have to be careful not to ask questions that regard diagnosis and treatment, but this is kind of like borderline. What would you recommend specifically for someone who has adrenal fatigue? Is hydrocortisone really needed if it's really bad? And Roger, just feel free to answer this the way you feel comfortable with.
Sure. If you're asking about hydrocortisone, then obviously you've probably gone to a doctor who's recommended it. If he felt that your body needed that to recover, you should probably do it. I would also look into, because it often is beneficial for people that want to do that. If he's trained in that modality, he probably knows what he's doing. If you're not happy with it, you can find another practitioner and check it out with them. But I would also do something, and this is, I really find it valuable in any type of dealing with any type of adrenal fatigue, is using some adaptogenic herbs, because you have to change the body's response. If you're not, then you're just putting something into your adrenals that it's going to use up quite quickly. In other words, it's kind of like having a faucet or a hole in the bottom of a glass that you're trying to fill with water. You're losing energy all the time, and by putting one thing that the adrenals need into it without stopping the loss of energy, which is the stress response, then you won't heal it as quickly. And adaptogenic herbs, things like ashwagandha, rhodiola, reishi mushroom, eleuthero, schizandra, all those herbs actually deal with taking down the nervous tension and and stopping the stimulation to the adrenals, so the adrenals can soak up more energy. That's what I would recommend.
Great, thank you. Speaking about herbs and mushrooms, I had been taught to believe that reishi, the red mushroom, is the most powerful and the blah 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 best mushroom, specifically in the Orient, the Asian countries. They feel is the best. In your experience, is it? I don't know if it's possible for you to pinpoint a single one, but which one have you been the most impressed with, mushroom-wise?
Well, in my personal opinion, it would have to be reishi mushroom.
Oh, really?
And the reason for that is that reishi was the first herb ever mentioned in the old ancient text, of China as the best and greatest herb. It's considered a better herb than ginseng in China. I mean, it's that highly revered. And the reason for it is that reishi mushroom has an effect on how you see life. It has an effect on stress and balancing your brain. And no other mushroom actually does that the same way. It has, reishi mushroom was originally used by monks to help them to meditate deeper.
Wow.
It was used by monks to go up into the mountain on retreat and to fast and take reishi mushroom to have some sort of an experience of their higher self. And in my personal experience, it was a reishi mushroom drink that I took that I had an amazing experience walking home after work, and I realized I had created my own chronic fatigue. Up until that point, I was still thinking, what happened to me? How did this happen to me? What invaded my body that gave me this chronic fatigue? And I drank that thing, and I had this total relaxation, and along with it, this incredible opening of my own heart and my own brain, to where I just realized at that moment I had caused all of it myself. And that's what really catapulted me into healing from it.
You know, I can relate to that because I've been taking coffee that has the reishi mushroom in it now. Probably it's not going to be as pure as what you had, but I've been taking that for 5 years. Now, when I first began to get on the coffee, they had told me that my dreams would be better. I would sleep better. Imagine sleeping better on coffee. But I would sleep better and I would have nicer dreams. and for the first couple of weeks, that's exactly what happened. I guess I've gotten used to the coffee, the reishi now, that I don't have those dreams like I used to. But it was fascinating to experience that from drinking coffee. So, and yes.
Well, you know, the interesting,
Go ahead.
The interesting thing about reishi mushroom, and this is getting into more esoteric things but the same glands that are involved in stress response reishi works on the pituitary, it works on your adrenals. It's also a surprisingly good mushroom for your thyroid. It's one of the best the best regulatory mushroom you could ever take, but it also has an effect on the energy centers related to your pituitary and your pineal gland. And so it has an effect on changing the way your brain processes information. It's kind of hard to describe unless people are into the energetics of how things work, but there's nothing else really like it. If it's in the right form and that you take it on a regular basis, it does amazing things. But reishi, when I first became an herbalist, there wasn't hardly any good reishi sold in America. And so the stuff that affects your consciousness more is usually the stuff that's about a 10 to 12 to 1 extract in a powdered form. I use it in my drink for the same thing. It's one of the things that makes people feel happier, and they feel more open. And generally after about 30 days of taking reishi, people will just have a whole different kind of view of life. They're more relaxed. They're a little bit happier. They get involved with things they have wanted to do for a long period of time. They just become more who they really are. It's kind of hard to describe. But when for instance, David, when I was working in the herb shop, one of our goals was to sell reishi mushroom to everybody that came in the store. No matter what they had going on, because it dealt with stress, but also we knew that if they came back 2 weeks later, they'd all be in a better mood. They'd be easier to deal with.
Wow, impressive. Someone's asking, would reishi tincture work as well?
Yes, if it's made out of the whole mushroom, yeah, it would. Reishi tincture works a little faster. Here's my take on tinctures and taking it in a powder. In tinctures, it tends to work quicker, but I don't know if it has as long a lasting effect.
Okay.
Things in powders tend to have more of a food type effect, whereas the tinctures have more of the isolated chemical effect. It's a little bit different, but I've drank many, many tinctures of reishi in my life. I love them all. If it's a good tincture, it's really good for you.
Okay. And by the way, we have your website on. People are looking at on the slide now, and we have both websites. Can they order the Qianqi from the tryqianqinow.com?
Yeah, they can order it from that. If they go to Ask Roger, there's a picture of it. They can click on that and go into the other site. The sites are connected to each other. But the Try Qianqi Now is the main site for selling the product.
Okay, could you spell that out for those who are just calling in and
Sure.
can't see the slide?
It's TryTianchi Now, N-O-W. So tryqianqinow.com.
Great.
And by the way, Tianqi means heavenly energy.
And of course, Qi is energy, so Tian is heaven.
Qian is heaven,
Mm-hmm.
and it's related to a certain acupuncture point on the top of your head, which influences your pineal gland.
Now, who was it that thought that the pineal gland was the center of control before they found out that there were other parts of the brain responsible for that?
You know, I don't remember who that is, but you know, the reality is that guy still may be right.
Really?
Yeah, because if you look at meditation and you look at energy centers, and, you know, I don't know if you're familiar with, in the esoteric world in India they talk more about chakras and energy centers.
Mm-hmm.
The pineal gland is related to the crown, which is where most of the heavenly energy enters your physical human body.
Mm.
So the pineal gland would be would be related to the main way that heavenly energy enters into your system. So, and the pineal gland is really responsible for a lot of glutathione production in your cells in your brain and regulating certain hormones. Who knows which one is the most important?
Wow, wow. And this Qian Qi would help with the pineal gland as well, specifically?
It's not specific, but it works on the energy system that is related to the pineal gland. One of the ways that Tian Qi is formulated is not just through regular herbal way of looking at the body or Western nutrition. It's kind of a blend of both, but it also takes into effect how is your brain affected by energy moving in through your what they call the crown chakra, the ajna, which is what most people refer to as third eye, and the back of the third eye, which is in the back of your head. All these energy centers actually influence the glands in that area, and those glands energize that specific area of your brain.
Mm.
So they all work kind of together. And like look at like rhodiola influences dopamine production and serotonin. Well, how does it do that? That herb doesn't have any nutrients in it that directly are made into those nutrients, right? Or those neurotransmitters. Ashwagandha influences acetylcholine. There's no choline in ashwagandha. How does that actually work? It energizes the glands and works on the energy centers in that part of the head, which influences how much energy that part of the brain can actually hold and process. And through that influence and lowering stress, the brain goes back to its more natural state of function and can use nutrients better when you take them in your diet or in other supplements.
Got it. Okay.
David, I honestly think that it's like with most really brain diseases, people are looking too much at how can I just give these people nutrients that will go into their brain and produce a neurotransmitter.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like filling up your gas tank of your car when the engine's broke. You have to take the engine somewhere and fix it, or it can't use any fuel in the gas tank, right?
I love that analogy. I love that.
Yeah, so the herbs actually energize the areas of the brain and allow it to be able to utilize nutrients that are in the diet and make it up in the brain.
That's fantastic. That is fantastic. Now, listen, Roger, I think we're going to need you to come back and do something specifically for the brain. Let's treat the brain and all these issues, especially for our older guests who are concerned about memory and Alzheimer's condition and all that.
Well, I would love to give a talk just on brain. You can schedule it anytime you want.
How about next week?
Next week, yeah, I'll do one on. Next week is
the 8th.
Next Thursday. I'm actually driving again. I have another vacation. I'm going to a family reunion. What time? Let me see. What time? No, it probably wouldn't work next Thursday. I could do the Thursday after. I could do it in 2 weeks.
I think that's taken. But how about a Monday? A couple of all the Mondays are free. Would any one Monday work?
Oh, Monday?
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. This Monday I have another one already at 9. What time would I be doing it? Is it always at 9?
Well, tell you what. We'll just talk about that later, okay? Well, we can schedule some other day. All right.
I'd love to, because there's a lot of stuff I could talk about on brain that I didn't include tonight, because I tried to make it a general thing of a lot of different things.
Right, and we appreciate that. But tell you what, though, one thing I didn't hear much of was acid-base balance, and I thought that would be a key part of homeostasis.
Well, yeah, but that has to do with I mentioned with the body. Well, acid alkaline is a part of homeostasis, and I mentioned it a little. I didn't actually mention it specifically, but it had to do with the soda pop story and the fact that your body produces this amount of sodium bicarbonate to neutralize everything, and that can only come from the trace minerals and nutrients in plant food in your diet, because that's the main way that your body gets alkalinizing substance, that and really clean water.
Right.
So it does play a part of, the body is always working toward keeping you in a state of a certain acid-alkaline balance.
Yeah, but with the plethora of different modalities trying to balance and make your blood more alkaline, there are obviously some things that, obviously there's the controversy of ionic, what is it called again, ionic water, that some doctors are very, very much against, and others are finding out it helps their bodies heal better and all that. So maybe it'd be good to help bring some sense to all that.
Okay.
Okay, how do you spell Sheen?
Jing?
Yeah, I guess, well, he says S-H-E-N, so you were saying Jing, right?
Jing, J-I-N-G.
J-I-N-G, and what does that mean?
Jing is the life force that you inherit from your parents at birth, and it's stored in your glandular system, especially your reproductive system. And the main way, it's the life force which is the basis of all the regulating, healing energy in your body. Everything in Chinese medicine you have the theory of qi, and in Three Treasures they have Jing, which is your stored life force from your parents. It's in your glandular system. Then you have qi, which is your body making energy every day, and then you have Shen, which is your inherent radiance and spirit. Well, it's all qi. It's just that they break it into three different components because it gets too esoteric for most people to understand. Qi, Jing is just stored energy in a condensed form in your body. They store that in your bone marrow, in your glandular system, your skeletal system. Qi is more the everyday energy you make out of your food that helps you to conserve your stored energy you get at birth. Shen is the most rarefied form of qi. It's your spirit. It's kind of a ethereal energy. It's what you tap into when you're feeling your best, your sharpest, and your happiest, and you've had those moments of almost aha where you just feel at one with things. That's when you've tapped into that energy, and you're in a complete state of balance.
That's what we want, isn't it?
It is. Well, we all crave that, actually. Everybody wants to feel better, even when they're feeling really good. And it's because they have this innate knowledge somewhere that they're supposed to be blissed. They're supposed to be blissed with this joy about life,
I agree. All right, so Joan says, thank you, Roger, for your wonderful presentation. Did you name the mushrooms you use? Did you mention you have a book? Thanks. Someone needs more information.
I don't have a book right now. I'm working on a few little booklets on certain things. The mushroom I use in my formula is just reishi. That's the only one I use. Most of the others are more immune system related and just specifically used for immune issues. And so reishi mushroom has not only the ability to work on immunity, but to cleanse your liver from pharmaceuticals and things, and to regulate your glandular system and have this effect of changing the way your brain processes information. And I use a special form of reishi. I have two different forms of reishi in my drink that are especially good at changing the connection between your brain and your heart.
And I've tried the Tranch and the Chianchi folks, and it's an interesting experience. I have to say that. Don't take it at night. Just say that right now.
No, it's meant to take in the morning and then to relieve your stress. And you'd be surprised how it's an energy drink. that will help you sleep better at night.
Yeah, but don't take it at night.
No, don't take it at night.
Okay. Can you recommend a website where we can find solutions that are more natural for healing? That is, what herbs will heal what conditions? Uh-oh, someone really wants to get into this. Is there a website that addresses these things?
I suggest for, if you really want to experience healing with herbs, to see an herbalist. And you can find them on the, I have my license through the NCCAOM, which is the National Certification Committee for Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine. So you can just go to nccaom.org, and you click on that, and you'll go right into it, and you can find any herbalist who's licensed in Chinese medicine in the United States will be listed on that website. You just put in your zip code, and they'll show you everybody that's in your area.
Oh, great.
So then you'll have a list of herbalists, and you can get a hold of them and talk to them. And it's easier when you start out to go get some help and then start to learn slowly, because herbalism can be very confusing, and everybody practices different things, just like doctors practice all different types of modalities. Even Chinese herbalists practice different types of Chinese medicine. And so it's best to go see someone. Just reading in a book and taking a few things may be fun, but if you have a real issue, you're not going to be able to figure it out too easily on your own. But again, the main thing you can do on your own is deal with stress and deal with your diet.
Right. All right. Someone wants to know, do you see patients, or how can we get more personal help from you?
I do have on my AskRogerDrummer.com website. If you look at who is Roger Drummer on the bar at the top, the description bar there. If you click on that, it has a button for consult. I do give phone consultations.
Great. Do you have a resource suggestion for the reishi mushroom? I guess she wants to know what's a good supplement brand.
A good brand?
I'm assuming that's what she wants.
Yeah. Boy, I'd have to look at the actual things out in the market. I don't ever buy it anymore. I haven't for years because I get it in kilo bags. And so I don't know a company right offhand. The Tea Garden is where I used to work in Los Angeles. So if you Google the Tea Garden, they probably have reishi mushroom.
Okay. Excellent. Well, that does it for tonight. I don't see any more questions, so I guess people have had their. I mean, you've made it extremely clear and straightforward. So I don't see anybody having major trouble with what you've said, and I think it has been extremely valuable too. So thank you so much again, Roger, for your time. I know it's late over there, and I'll just give you a quick shout after the webinar, if nobody else.
All right.
Okay. All right.
Fantastic. Well, we'll do it again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks. All right, folks. Thank you for joining us. And again, if you have any questions, just shoot us an email. You can have access to these webinars afterwards. Just check our website. So have a great evening. God bless. Good night. And yes, happy 4th of July, everyone. Be safe.